I'm glad you can take some time to devote to worship this weekend. And even though last Sunday was the last Sunday of Christmastide, the 12 days of Christmas, we're marking that today, or this weekend, because the weather prevented us from being able to gather safely last weekend. So, and we got one more Sunday of Christmas carols to sing. So we're going to do that as we look at this turning point, moving out of Christmastide and into Epiphany, this moment when the wise men are showing up. To start that, I want to show you a picture that hangs on our wall at home. What I got here is, starting this side, that's a picture of my wife in her wedding dress in front of the front of the Bevere Catholic Church. And then on the other side, this is her mother at the same Catholic church, same altar. And there is her grandmother. Same altar, same place in the Bevere Catholic Church. And they tell stories about that altar, how that altar was taken across the plains on a wagon, and that came from overseas. And you can tell it was not built for that space because it goes the full altar, the whole setup goes it goes almost to the ceiling. It is almost too big for that church, but it is magnificent, and that is the church that, as you can see from that picture, that generation after generation of my wife's family has had their weddings in. To the fact that we have that picture, the fact that we have this memory that's passed down through my wife's side of the family, you start to learn something about a family. When you start getting together with other members of the family and you listen to the stories that they tell. And you listen to the stories out of my wife's family about they're from Italy and they wanted to learn to speak English correctly so that they would not be mocked at school when they're first generation immigrants. And so they worked whatever jobs they could find. So they worked 7 days a week at the mine year round, so that when one of Olivia's great uncles, Uncle Squee, when he retired, he followed his wife around and didn't know what to do because he'd worked 7 days a week at the mine for his entire adult life, that they were bootleggers, and well, some people got caught, others did not, and so there's the whole side of the family. The way they got through the Great Depression, were able to care for people because they had food, and then how a lot of them went into education. First, as Olivia's great uncle John was a superintendent of schools of Bevere, and then many other family members since then have gone into education. And so this all sort of mixes together this sort of generosity and work ethic and a touch of daring. And it's all, whenever we come home from a family gathering, right? I understand my wife a little bit more. I understand who she is and where it all comes from. It makes more sense. And the same thing is true for her when I come home, when we come home from seeing my family, right? She understands, or at least maybe makes sense of where I don't make sense, where I'm not understandable, and how we'll go to a restaurant, right? And this happened early on. She in our marriage, we realized we'll go to the restaurant, and I'll take a menu and I'll start critiquing the menu and this dish and that dish and how they create it, and start critiquing it, and then we went out with my parents, and she saw my mom doing it, and then it comes from my grandma, and it turns into a verb in my family. If we're going to critique a dish, critique something at a restaurant, my grandparents, they would bring home menus from restaurants so that they could recreate the dishes from the restaurant. I can just make that at home. And then when we sit down and critique a meal, we call it Nancy-ing a meal, because that's my grandma, Nancy Fletcher. Well, Nancy a meal, or critique how we could have made that better. And so when it comes to food, now Olivia can make sense of where that comes from. But when it comes to work, she saw the way that my dad worked. And I cook like my mom, but I work like my dad. I'm always thinking about the next sermon. I've spent 3 days this week looking at all of the sermon ideas and permutations for the next couple months, and how's it all going to fit together. And I'm thinking, and I'm planning the next event, and it to the point that what Olivia realized is that for my mom to get my dad to relax, she had to take him out of country sometimes to just get him away from work. I'm cheaper. You don't have to take me out of country to get me just out of county. Is if I don't really have much of a day off unless I'm out of county. And even when I try, like today, I'm recording this on a Saturday. I live next to the church, and there's a leak in the roof right over there, and like you just get called over, and there's always something to do. And so I cook like my mom, I work like my dad. I have learned that if you want to understand someone, you ask whose kid is that? What's their last name? You ask about their family. You ask what are the stories that your family tells, and understand family background. And if I'm going to understand a person, I'm usually thinking about 3 generations back is what I need to understand who that person is. I think when I'm trying to understand someone, I'm looking for 3 generations back. What we're looking at when we're looking at Jesus is 77 generations. Like we can go back a lot further with Jesus than most of us can today. I can go 4 generations back, maybe 5, but and some people can go more. But for Jesus, you can go back rather far. And to know Jesus' lineage, it tells us both that he is from the line of David, the line of the leaders of the tribe of Judah, and that his line goes all the way back to Adam. And what this helps us understand is knowing this lineage is a bit more about its Epiphany, right? The wise men show up. Now, think about what it means for the wise men to show up. Like, for the wise men to show up, they have to be utterly fascinated and intrigued by what they understand to be happening. They have to be fascinated and intrigued. Like, to say a king is born in that day and age is not saying much, because every polity back then, every way of doing politics was based on having a king of some sort. Kings were almost a dime a dozen, so to speak. Like to say a new king is born, okay, so what? Like a new king is born, tomorrow's Tuesday, like whatever. It's just, it happens, right? It's not that everyone's a king, but like every kingdom has a king, and there's just kings all over the place. So why are they interested in this one? Why do these men, of some number, we traditionally say there are 3. We're not actually sure. There were 3 gifts given, so we think there are 3 people. Okay, whatever. But like these number of learned, wise men want to take the time to take maybe up to, if not more than a year, to travel to come see this king. The best I can tell is they're so intrigued because they've read about Jesus's family. They've read about Jesus' family, and they know that this king, this is a king worth paying attention to, right? They know, I mean, we all know, no child is a blank slate. Every child follows in the footsteps of the family in some degree. Like, what are the footsteps that they found as they studied and as they read the Jewish scriptures, as they read the prophets, as they read the Torah, as they read what we now call the Old Testament? What about what they read there caught their attention so that they said, this king we need to go see? They read things like that he's going to be the son of David. Well, who's David? David is the guy who's honest and faithful and bold and humble. And when he screws up, he eats his crow. And we have this Psalm 51 about how he humbles himself and confesses. A king in the line of David. David's worth paying attention to. He is the son of Boaz. Boaz, who has a heart for those in trouble, who helps Ruth and marries her. He is the son of Nahshon, of the other leaders of the tribe of Judah. And to say he's of the tribe of Judah, like Judah, that's worth paying attention to. And Genesis 49, what is said about who the tribe of Judah will be. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp from the prey, my son, you have gone up. He crouches down, he stretches out like a lion. Who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. Jesus is the son of Isaac, who trusted his father Abraham, whose name means laughter. He is the son of Abraham, who followed God into a strange land. He is the son of Noah, who trusted God to do what didn't make sense at that moment, to build a boat, even when it wasn't raining. He's the son of Adam, the son of God. Something about this combination of people is what caught the wise men's eyes and said, this is a king we need to go pay attention to. Now, we don't have all of the ancestors. There are at least 36 of the names of Jesus' ancestors that we just don't know anything about. But we know enough. In the same way that, I don't know all of Olivia's ancestors. I don't know all of my ancestors, for that matter, but I know enough to know something significant about the family, right? What we can understand is that based upon the family, we can know something about who this child is going to grow up to be. It is essential to the nature of this faith, of being a disciple of Jesus, is to make it, to hold on to the fact that the person we follow is a person and thus has a personality. And so if we want to know him better, we can spend time with him and we get to know his family better. In the same way that the way I get to know someone else better is I ask about their family and I pay attention to who their family is, we can do the same for Jesus. And so before we move on from this Christmas tide, this end of this Christmas season, as we acknowledge this moment of Epiphany, and I'd invite you to join with the wise men and pay attention not just to Jesus, but pay attention to his family. Read some about his family that you may not know that family story as well. Open your Bible. If it's study Bible, it'll be there at the bottom in the notes on the passage. It's at the beginning of the Gospels. They give us these lineages, and maybe look up some of those names and read some stories about not just who Jesus is, but who is the family that shaped who he was going to turn out to be. If we want to know Jesus better, this is one important way to do it. One way to honor the child whose birth we celebrate. Amen.